What's going on, guys? It's Bear here from the Scryguys, and today I wanted to show you the only mono blue commander I'll ever play, and honestly, the only mono blue commander I think it's worth playing. Alright, let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Unesh, 4 and 2 blue legendary creature Sphinx. Flying Sphinx creatures you control cost less, 2 less to cast. That is a tongue twister. Whenever Unesh or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into the graveyard. Finally, a mono blue commander. Not finally. This has been around for 5 years at this point. Jeez, it's been a long time. But this is basically saying that this deck is going to be pretty creature heavy, because it's going to turn all your Sphinxes into mini Factor Fiction, because I believe Factor Fiction is 5 cards or something like that, right? But yeah, this is telling you basically that all your creatures are a good chunk of your deck is going to be creatures, which this is, because it's around 29 creatures. You can go ahead, check down below on my deck list from MTG Goldfish or Arcadeck and see just how many creatures I have in here. It is pretty creature heavy, and hopefully we'll be able to rule the skies as Sphinx should, telling riddles, a whole bunch of riddles. But let's talk about our RAM package. Now, I forgot to put Jeweled Lotus in here, but Jeweled Lotus is in the deck, but I forgot to put it on the slide. But we have Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Grim Monolith, Mind Stone, Nyx Lotus, and Thran Dynamo, and Gilded Lotus. We want to get Unesh out as soon as possible, so we can take advantage of the cost reduction from Unesh, and we can go ahead and start refilling our hands after deploying all of our ramp pieces. Obviously Jeweled Lotus, which is not on here, but Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and a land can get Unesh out turn 1, which is kind of crazy. Therefore, replacing 2 to 3 cards into your hand. Grim Monolith is nice because it could always get Unesh out a lot earlier. Nyx Lotus is probably going to be one of my favorite pieces of ramp in this deck, just because although it does come in tapped, a lot of our Sphinxes have a lot of blue pips in them, so it's going to act like a secondary Nykthos, which we do have in the deck. I didn't put a land page on this deck tech just because it's 30 lands. I mean, it's 30 islands and then a couple of just niche pieces in there, Nykthos being one of them, because again, this deck has a lot of blue pips in it, so it's basically going to act like a Guy's Cradle for our Sphinxes. This one is Super Sale Ramp. This is going to be the cost reduction, so it's not going to really be a mana rock, but a mana reduction rock, as I'd like to say. We have Sapphire Medallion. 2 blue spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, colorless. This one is just all around good piece of ramp. Herald's Horn is going to be a little bit better for our deck because it is a typo deck. 3, when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, Sphinx. Creature spells you cast of the chosen type will cost 1 less to cast, so it's going to add in another cost reduction after our Unesh is onto the battlefield. And then at the beginning of the upkeep, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you can put it into your hand and then draw. So it's going to give us a little bit of card draw as well. The deck is 29% creatures. And then Urza's Incubator, when it comes down, choose a creature type, Sphinx. Creature spells you of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. So just imagine, I like to call this like little Wonderland, Christmas or Magic Wonderland. This and Unesh is out, so all of our Sphinxes are going to cost at the very minimum 2 pips of blue, which is crazy, because then it's gonna draw us into more Sphinxes to play even more, and this deck draws a lot of cards as long as Unesh is out. Let's go for extra value, because we are a typable deck. We have to take advantage of this. Reflections of Lejara, 4 in a blue enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, Sphinx. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. So this is going to act like a doubling season for our creatures. It's going to give us 2 Factor Fictions, and it's just going to give us such a board presence in the air that we might not even have to draw our deck to win. We might just be able to kill everybody in the air with a whole bunch of Sphinxes. Just a whole bunch of birds with guy faces or women faces in the air. It's terrifying, right? And we have Kindred Discovery, 3 and 2 blue enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, Sphinx. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. So not only is it enough that whenever we cast a Sphinx, we Factor Fiction, but whenever we play one, whenever we attack with one, we're gonna draw so much you're gonna get sick of it. You're gonna want to build a deck that doesn't draw at all, because you're gonna be drawing so much in this deck. Whoa, slow down for this next segment. Everyone's gonna hate this card. I know you will. Back to basics. 2 in a blue enchantment. Non-basic lands don't untap during their controller's untap step. So because this isn't really going to affect any other mono colored players in the table, because a lot of those people tend to just run a lot of basics and a couple key cards like Ancient Tomb, Nykthos, and all that stuff. But this will start to hurt players that are playing 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, because then they don't get to play Magic, which is not a very popular archetype to do. But this Unesh is a 6-drop, and then people tend to want to remove him as soon as possible because they don't want you to value so much from the Unesh value train that sometimes you gotta slow him down, and this is one way to do it at a very cheap cost of 3 mana. It is not very popular though, and it does a good job of being a magnet for removal, whether it be Beast Within or Naturalize or anything like that. That new colorless creature that exiles an artifact or creature, artifact or enchantment. That's $5. At least this is gonna eat up some removal, so hopefully they use it, removal on this instead of Unesh, because they want to play Magic. And then Stormtide Leviathan, a classic, 5 and 3 blue. Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to their other types. Creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. So this is a card that just really says you gotta rule the skies or you gotta walk on islands to be able to attack. This is a detriment to Gruul colored decks and Boros decks. But it's another way to stall out the game for you to be able to at least catch up, maybe to ramp up a little bit. It just gives you enough time to catch up to the table to hopefully play Unesh again and start the value train all over again. Double time. Now, what do I mean by that? We're going to want to double up our triggers for our Sphinxes. So we have That's the Deep Dwelling, 3 in a blue, legendary enchantment creature god, indestructible. It isn't a creature until you have 5 devotion, but at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control, and it has active ability, 3 in a blue, tap another target creature. So this is gonna give our Sphinxes a little bit of pseudo vigilance. We can go in and swing out with them and then bring them back onto the battlefield, Factor Fiction, and then also have a blocker up for next turn. It's just really good, and it's a little bit harder to get rid of because of the indestructible. You gotta exile it to get rid of it. And then Panharmonicon, what else can I say about this? 4 colorless. If an artifact or a creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers 1 more time. So we just get double triggers off of Unesh's and off of our Wise Sphinxes. Must has Sphinx to enter. These cards are going to do its best impression of being a Sphinx. Universal Automaton, Amoeboid, Changeling, Shapeshare, Mistform, Ultimus, and Ovar the All Form. These are all shapeshifters. I'm pretty sure if you've seen tribes that might not have as much support, but they need like triggers off of like the typo that they are. These are all, you're gonna obviously see shapeshifters all the time, and so these ones are going to be really cheap. They're going to act more like cantrips for our for our Unesh, to hopefully get us into our bigger sphinxes, and to be able to take advantage of their ETBs, their attack triggers, or combat damage triggers, and all that stuff. And you know, Ovar, not really, can't really capitalize on it, but Ovar coming down for 2 and then giving us a Factor Fiction is always good. Shapeshare is a little bit better just because it could shape into, maybe there's a Nyx Bloom Ancient onto the field, an Archon of Cruelty, and it could change into that. So that's always good, and that's another plus side. And for 1 blue mana, if our commander is out, it's a really good. But the wisest of sphinxes, I didn't want to put a little animation here because I just wanted you to see them all for their glory. The all-seeing 3 and 3 pips of blue legendary Sphinx flying. It has an ability 2 and a blue tap, draw 2 cards and discard a card. But when it deals damage, you could reveal your hand, and if you have 6 different cards with 6 different mana values, that player loses the game. So you can slowly but surely kill the table with just this creature on there. Sphinx's Ambassador is 5 and 2 blue. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can search that player's library, pull out a creature card, and if they can guess the creature card, you put it back. But if they guess wrong, you put it onto the battlefield for free. That is nuts. Now, a little bit more, if you're playing a little bit more competitive, first of all, I don't think this would be able to compete with the competitive cycle, but it's a really fun deck to play. And then, so if you're bringing out on that table where it's just you're having fun, you know, you might be going out for the big splashy creatures like Nyx Bloom Ancient, Dockside Extortionist, to be able to get into deeper into your game plan. It'll be nutty, but you can go even for more of the unsure, like the more obscure creatures that they're like, why did you pick that creature? Like, I don't know, because it'd be funny. Sphinx of the Second Sun, 6 and 2 blue, flying. At the beginning of your post combat main phase, you get an additional beginning phase after this phase. So that just means that after your main phase 2, you go through that. Right before your end step, you get to untap all your creatures, all your lands, all your artifacts, and then draw a card. So it's a really good Sphinx just to feign possible counter magic or psych rift or anything like that. It's just it's doing its best impression of a wilderness reclamation. So, and if it's coming down for 5 mana, for 4 mana, 3 mana, or whatever it is, it's even better. And it gets you effect friction. Dazzling Sphinx is a good favorite of mine. It's 3 and 2 blue, flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery, and you can play that. So typically you want to maybe hit the player that's playing the extra turn spells, right? Or the ramp spells or anything like that. This is just like, it's a lottery card, and I used to have a lot of fun with Golos, even though now he's banned for some reason. He's banned. But this one is going to just give you into free spells. You never know what you get into, and that's always the fun thing about like these lottery type of cards. And you know, first of all, you probably want to optimize it for the most dangerous person on the battlefield. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Can you solve this? I don't know. Can you solve this riddle? I don't know why I called it this section, but these are going to be our counter spells. It's a little bit pricey, but we really need pretty heavy protection for our Unesh, because after 6 it becomes 8, 10, 12. It just escalates even higher. And so these are really more going to do its best versions of white cards that give creatures indestructible, or green cards that give creatures hexproof and all that stuff. Really, you only want to use these just to protect your board or to protect Unesh, especially if you're running low on cards and then having to spend your turn paying 8-10 mana for Unesh just to draw maybe 1 to 2 cards is going to be pretty rough. Obviously, if you want to build this on the deck on a budget, you could replace this with like negates and counter spells and arcane denials. I've had this deck for probably 3 years now, so I just keep slapping my best counter spells in here. And mainly I really just do use it to either hopefully try to stop somebody to win, or protect my board. I don't really typically play these to stop anyone from maybe advancing their board state a little bit. These are really just in case of emergency, break the glass type of things. Misdirection and foil are probably my favorite ones, just because typically people don't really see them coming. Misdirection will stop a Path to Exile or Beast Within. Foil will knock you down 3 cards, just because you have to have an island, and then you have to have another card to discard, and then this card, obviously, so you're down 3 spells, but you're going to be drawing so much in this deck that it's going to mitigate that downside. And it's an uncommon. It's like 20 cents, so not a bad rate for that. But at some point, you're going to be like, I tire of this game, and we're going to try to win. Now, if we can't win by combat, which is my favorite way to win in a mono blue deck, we're going to just go the old school route. Thassa's Oracle. If you guys, the more competitive you guys are going to play, the more you'll see this guy, right? When it enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards, where X is the devotion of blue. But if your devotion is higher than the amount of cards in your deck, then you go ahead and just win the game. This is going to be kind of the boring portion of this. My fun of this deck is more just piloting it, and not like, I don't even care if I win. Sometimes you build decks that you don't even care if you win, as long as you just get to do some things. It's really a fun time for me. We have Laboratory Maniac, the Thassa's Oracle before Thassa's Oracle. If you would draw cards while your library has no cards, you win the game instead, and that's how I want to win sometimes. Sometimes you're forced to win this way because you've drawn so many cards that it just doesn't really matter. And then we have Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. 1 and 3 pips of blue, has a static ability. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards on it, you win the game instead. +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, draw a card, and then -8, draw 7 cards. Then if you have no cards left in your library, you win the game. Jace will be the most well-protected planeswalker ever, because it's being protected by its teachers, the Sphinxes, right? It's kind of hard because a lot of these Sphinxes also have big butts, or like 4 power, 6 toughness, and all that stuff, so it's kind of hard to get through, at least with combat wise. Spot removal, again, you might want to use one of your free counter spells or your cheap counter spells to protect Jace, especially the closer you get to having no cards in your library. So yeah, I know a lot of you are gonna say that's not really an exciting way to win the game, but for me, it's just like me being able to play these these expensive Sphinxes, and just being able to draw cards to be able to hopefully to play more. Just because Sphinxes aren't really too, I mean, they're popular, but like you don't really get to see them as much. And so for me, it's just fun to play them, and a lot of people, every time I bring this, especially to a new table, they're like, what does that Sphinx do? What does that Sphinx do? What does that do? It's fun, yeah, and it is like a typical blue deck with all the counter spells, but I don't, you end up not really playing it like the typical blue deck, just because really you're just using these counter spells to try to save your commander, and not really try to stop people from playing their deck, right? But let's go to the deck breakdown. Cost of the deck, it's about around $980, which is pretty expensive. You could easily build this for under $100. The only reason the price is what it is because of the mana rocks that are in here. None of the creatures are really too expensive. I'm pretty sure the creature base is like $28 or something like that. The cost of this is really all in the mana rocks and the free counter spells and all that stuff. So definitely you could build this budget. If anyone comments down below, I'll make sure to reply back and do a budget version of this, maybe do like under $100. And if you guys want to see a video on that, make sure to comment that too. But even with this cost, what is the power level of this deck? This deck does not function without Unesh, because if Unesh is out, if none of your cost reduction is out, and you're paying full price for these riddle me this type of characters, you're gonna spend your whole turn just playing one Sphinx and hoping that it lives through the turn. So I would about say 6 out of 10, just because of the free counter spells and because of the fast mana that's in here. I would rank it a little bit above a 5. I don't win a lot with this deck, but it always gets me to laugh. I mean, when I do win, it's always fun, especially if it's a Sphinx beatdown deck. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. The only mono blue commander I probably would play. And yeah, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us what else we can do for you guys. Have a good one.